Hey, how you guys doing? It's the producer from Brothers Comics. Welcome to our House of the Dragons recap as we are at the midpoint of season 2. We have started a tradition of recording the previous week's episode literally, minutes, hours before the new episode on Sunday night. So that tradition continues. As you can tell, it's on a Sunday. I got my Wimbledon shirt on. Shouts out to Carlos Alcaraz on the line. It's Lady
Woo!
Dragonstone. What's happening?
Hello, hello, everybody.
Yes, we're going to go through this episode. I would say probably potentially the best episode of the series. I would also say that, unfortunately, by what happens at the end of this particular episode, this is it's a downward spiral, I guess, in terms of what people are really interested in. As much as you liked Game of Thrones, if people like Game of Thrones, the dragons were a side dish, not the main entree.
Mm.
Whereas in this series that they are, but we all know as we time we get to the start of Game of Thrones, dragons are kind of a thing of the past. So every time you see one, you're gonna eventually not see it later on. Would that be fair?
Yes, this is what ends them all.
Yeah. So, and again, shouts out to the queen who never was, Princess Rhaenys,
Hmm.
who has told Queen Rhaenyra, like, once you start fighting with dragons, it's a wrap, and that's pretty much on the path that we're on. So the episode tonight is titled "The Red Dragon and the Gold," or "The Dance of the Dragons." The initial episode thought was it was the Dance of the Dragons, but then you're saying that they changed it, right? Like after it aired,
Yeah,
they changed it to a
when we
different thing.
watched it, yeah, when we've nicely done. When we've watched it, it was called A Dance of Dragons, and then when I went to rewatch it the next morning, it was called The Red Dragon and the Gold. And this is the Westeroses, the Instagram account. Shout out to them,
Mm-hmm.
theory, because I commented on one of their posts when they were talking about the episode. I was like, "The hell did they change the name for?"
Mm-hmm.
And the theory was, we have no
Yeah.
idea, but the theory was probably Ryan Condal being Petty, the head writer, showrunner, because that episode 4, when they were shooting it, it leaked. It completely leaked. They knew the title. So I think it was just maybe him being Petty.
Okay. Yeah, I mean
Because that
that
this
they've done,
episode leaked months ago.
and people have done that before. Like that's a fairly common thing in Hollywood and movies and whatnot. I mean, if you Google like what Star Wars or The Empire Strikes Back or whatever those were actually called on the set, they don't want those leaks to get out there even back then. And so they would call it some weird name or whatever so people wouldn't, pay any attention to what it was actually filming. Yeah, so yes, if you're on YouTube, I've heard it both ways. So the Red Dragon and the Gold, or the Dance of the Dragons, is the episode that we're going to be talking about tonight, as we get ourselves ready and prepped for episode 5, as we're in now the backstretch of this short 8 episode season for season 2. So we'll go over it just like we did in the past, kind of beat by beat, stopping
Mm.
on some key points. Lady Dragonstone will fill us in on some book stuff. You forgot to send me, I have to give you a share screen if you can get your computer up and running about, shots out from the book. So let's jump into it and we'll go.
Uh-uh.
All right. So Damon's on a side mission, and it's kind of funny to me that probably the most
He's
well-known,
flipping balls.
yeah, the most well-known actor in the entire series, and something that you had essentially built season 1 upon him, or a good portion of it, at least in his personality. You've kind of, taken him out essentially in the last 2 episodes, really, on a side mission to over to Harrenhal, where he's out here straight tripping, he's on drugs, the castle is haunting him, and we get a chance to see Millie. What's her name? Millie Brown? No, Millie.
Millie Bobby. Millie
Akon,
Alloc.
Melee Alloc or
Alloc.
whatever, playing
Alcock. I
young
don't know.
Queen Rhaenyra, and she
There we
made
go.
her second appearance here. And essentially she tells him, you're gonna get what you asked for. You're gonna get what you deserve. There's going to be blood on your hands. Oh, symbolism here. And after he, chops her head off and gets the crown at his feet, her head talking to him, you're gonna get, you have this blood on your hand, and that's pretty much the end of that little tripping scene. Is that
Mm.
in the book, or is this some made up TV
This
nonsense?
is a made up thing. Okay, so Alice Rivers is responsible for all of that. We get a bigger insight of Alice later into the episode. She's responsible for all this. If you watch the behind the scenes thing, it's like Alice Rivers is pretty old. It's like the idea for them is that she's been at Harrenhal for like 400 years since it's there. She gives him like a history lesson of Harrenhal later on in this scene, but we don't. Again, book is second. Book's not a first-hand account. It's a history book. We know Damon was at Harrenhal. We know what
Mm-hmm.
he got up to in Harrenhal. We know what he accomplished at Harrenhal, which is quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't necessarily know what happened to him while he was inside. But I do like this. I think they had an opportunity to bring Melialok back, and they did it, and they did it pretty well. Another instance of symbolism. It's not symbolism. It's parallelism. Is they have the opening scene of this episode being that same scene from episode 1 where young Rhaenyra goes and sees Daemon after he's back from wherever the hell he was in the first
Mm-hmm.
episode when the tourney is happening for Rhaenyra's eventually dead brother. Him sitting on the throne, them speaking High Valyrian, because the entire scene is in High Valyrian. He doesn't speak
Mm-hmm.
English once. Then you have also she's wearing one of older Rhaenyra's dresses, which I
Mm-hmm.
think is cool. And then there's little Rhaenyra wearing a crown that's a little bit too big for her,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Oh,
also great.
okay.
But
Yeah.
I don't like the only like the realistic part of it, like the actor from Screen thing is people have definitely been using the return of Millie Alex's Rhaenyra to be very transphobic to Emma Darcy's portrayal of Rhaenyra.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Well, I mean,
please shut the hell up.
yeah, the internet's a terrible place, and social media. Everybody doesn't need an opinion, yet we've given them multiple venues to out to be absolute idiots. Yeah, I mean, like I said, in terms of just the show, I understand what you're saying, but just having Damon away from
Mhm.
essentially all the action and conflict at this point is, like,
It's
well,
mostly because he strives on action and conflict. He is quite literally a character of action and conflict. He causes a bunch of problems, but he also solves a good majority of them. I think
right,
a really good quote from George R. R. Martin about Damon is he is equal parts evil and good all at the same time, and that's what makes him as compelling as he is, I think.
okay,
And he, like in the book, he would be doing stuff technically at this point. They're dragging it out for, I'm assuming, dramatic effect for some bigger things that happen, which I'm excited to see. But
mm,
I do like what they're doing. I like the idea of Harrenhal, and I think the haunting of Harrenhal, like Alice is a witch in the book. She's rumored to be a witch. You don't you see her doing magic kind of later, but you don't necessarily see it when Damon is at Harrenhal. Emphasis on
mm,
Damon, but I kind of like what they're doing with Alice, and then it's also obviously so they can hey, we have Melisandre in Game of Thrones, but we have Alice Rivers here.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, him being away it's been having its dire consequences, as we'll see later on in the episode. Damon not being here,
right.
but
Mm,
it's been pretty good so far.
all right, let's move on. Can you just kill your grandpa just a little bit? Just a little bit. Just a smidge, just a little bit of death. His other side mission while he's at Harrenhal, he wanted to meet with what I think is Oscar Tully is
Mm-hmm.
the head there, and he's incontinent. He's on his deathbed, and Damon's trying to win over and get his troops or whatever for this fight, and they send his grandsire over there, and Damon's just like, just kill him a little bit. Like, what are we doing here? Like, just put a pillow over his face and just go ahead and kill him. Which his son, who I think is Oscar and Grover. It's a very Sesame Street situation here. Uh, and he refuses to do it, and he's like, well, you know, I don't really know why I'm here at this particular point. So yeah, it's again Oscar Tully on his deathbed. This is again historical accounts. He's supposed to be almost near the end.
Yes, like I don't have a lot of thoughts of the Tullys in the Riverlands aside from that who they eventually declare support for.
Mm,
What Damon is trying to do is unite the Riverlands into a force and an army for Rhaenyra. To do that, he needs their lord, essentially. Their what is it called? Their liege lord. So there's like a liege lord, which is like I'm just gonna use the Starks for example because that's the easiest one to do. Like the liege lord would be like the Starks, and then you have like the lower houses, which would be the oh my god, what are those? The Boltons and people like that. The Starks are the
mm,
ones in charge. and those are their
Right.
bannermen. While still nobility, they are lesser rank. So uh, Bracken and Blackwood, those are bannermen to House Tully of the Riverlands. So it's strong is like where Harrenhal is strong is also a House Strong is also a bannerman to Lord Tully. So he kind of needs them. He needs the Tullys to be like, hey, get your shit together.
Right.
That's what he needs, and that's essentially why he's like, you want to kill your grandpa for me, so I can just
Yeah. And
do some.
rally the troops. And he's getting word from Lord Laris's folks too at Harrenhal, about the plans of Team Green as well.
Oh yeah, he's Lord Lionel, wasn't it? No, it's not Lionel. I don't remember his stupid name. But the Lord of Harrenhal currently is he's telling David, it's like, hey, they these houses are declaring for Green that were initially for Rhaenyra after Sir Criston. It's revealed later on in the episode that it's been a fortnight
Hmm.
between episode 3 and 4. And if you have read British literature or you're a Taylor Swift fan, you'll know that a fortnight is 2 weeks.
Or if you watch Wimbledon, well, Fortnite is also 2 weeks. But yes, you don't need to do
Let
any
me
of those other things. But go
let me
ahead.
do my Swifty references. Thank you, thank you. So it's been 2 weeks, and Sir Kristen has essentially had an insanely successful battle campaign. He has turned two of Rhaenyra's strongest supporters, two members of her council, their armies to turn cloaks to Aegon.
Yep.
He is kicking some ass.
And we'll
With
talk about
Crispy
Kristen here in a little bit because he,
pisses me off.
actually really comes up as being a decent leader here. Something that we hadn't really thought that he was going to be. And
Mm,
you also got to understand. I mean, jumping into the episode or whatever, it's a week old. So if you're listening to this, like, excuse me, he might not be a master tactician, but Aemon is, and the two of them together form a pretty useful tandem in terms of
yeah,
trying to turn the
holy shit,
war.
yes, 100%. That's a book thing too.
Okay.
Aemond and Kristen having this like kind of real bond. In the show, I think they adapted it more to the he sees Kristen as a father figure, the
Hmm.
irony, which he doesn't know about that though. He
Hmm.
sees Kristen as a father figure. It's like he trained with Sir Kristen a lot in the books. You see it in the show, like in episode like 8 or 9, that you see he's always with Kristen, kind of going there and training. And it's he those two together is an
Yeah.
insanely kind of
Yeah.
entertaining bunch.
Yeah, it's a good combination between the two of them. They finally round each other out for sure. All
They're
right, we
both
move on to plan A and plan B. Again, if you're on YouTube, one of the greatest memes and gifs of all time on a very popular show. So at Driftmark, Rhaenys confronts Corlys about his bastards. Um, and I'll have a joke about this later, but he doesn't deny it. Just like, yeah, well, and then
He's
she
been away at sea for a couple of years. There ain't no way
right,
he's not
yeah.
doing
I
something.
mean, yeah. So there's that, and also she doesn't. I mean, she clocks it, but she doesn't really like dwell on it or whatever. And duty calls essentially for her that she has to go back to Dragonstone because Rhaenyra is missing again, as
Rhaenyra
we all know. Rhaenyra, sorry, that she's missing again because she, we talked about
did some dumb
last week
shit.
on her trip to the Sept, and she's on her way back, from King's Landing. But nobody on the small council knows that besides her. Um, so she's gone. At the Red Keep, Allison has called the doctor or the maester to, I think he's Orwellian or maester something.
Grand Maester Orwell.
Oh yeah, Orwell. And on here he's a black fella. So um she's like, yeah, about this tea, and he brings her the moon tea. And she engages in this conversation with him, essentially like, so, when my husband was dying, did he really say anything about Aegon being the king, because he was out of it or whatever? And he clocks that immediately, like, bitch, I am not getting involved in this shit. Like, that was the blackest he's ever been in that show, because he did not want to engage in any of that conversation, because he knows if that goes left, he's getting beheaded by
Yeah.
somebody. And so he's like, well, he very hems and haws it through that whole folks staying out of them white folks shenanigans. And then on Dragonstone, Rhaenyra's advisor to push for war without being present, Corlys squashes that like with the quickness. Like, no, she's not here. You're not making any decisions without her being here. So, no. And then, come to find out later on, like a couple of the dudes that are on the small council have had their people turned against them on Sir Corliss's march. But again, they're still shooting for war, and they just can't, get Rhaenyra to do anything about it. And she's not there. Any thoughts?
Rhaenyra's being a dummy, which I don't like saying because I love Rhaenyra, but she's being a dumbass. She should be there. She should never have gone to King's Landing. This war has
Never.
been started. There is literally no backtracking at this point. There was no backtracking after he killed Luke. There was
Hmm.
definitely no backtracking after not Aemon, Aegon's kid was killed.
Yeah.
Not at all whatsoever. Um, I did like the little small council scenes where you kind of get to see Jason Bela kind of pseudo step up into the Prince and Princess of Dragonstone role. She's
Hmm.
going to be the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, and he is the Prince of Dragonstone. So I kind of did like to see that. I liked her snapping at that Bela snapping at that one lord. That's like you should have burned them when you had the chance. Which yes, she
Hmm.
should have. But she's like,
Yeah.
perhaps you can do it when next time you're out on your
Red
dragon,
Dragon.
you
Yes,
peasant.
very much. Hmm.
Badass. That is, I will say, I say this a lot. She is Damon Jr., and we're gonna see
Hmm.
that later on in the show. She is 100% her father's daughter, and it's kind of scary.
Hmm.
But and then you get to see kind of Jace being like trying to lead, but they're not really listening to him.
Yeah.
He's trying
So
to kind
young.
of because he's 16. He's 16. The
Well,
canon
but yeah, but in the show, yeah, yeah, yeah. Go ahead. I'm
and
sorry.
and then it's like they don't know how to listen. They don't really want to listen to Jace. Again, Jace is a very smart person. He has a very tactical mind, but it's not tactical in the way that like Aemon's is, where it's bloodshed. His is kind of geared to rear around it,
Hmm.
and they want war. And he's just like, I don't know what to do, but
Right.
I know we need to do something. And again, I said this last time. I was like, for Jace, this is a completely personal war. That one-eyed little boy, well, he's not little.
Hmm.
That one-eyed man killed his brother, and he has been fiending to be let out of Dragonstone since he got back. Like he
Right.
walked around freaking strapped. His hand is always on that stupid sword, man. Like Rhaenyra needs to let him out to do something because he is losing his mind here. And uh, Alicent with her Westerosi Plan B. For the
Yeah.
record, there was a whole conversation when the producer and I were watching this. I was like, "Oh, I thought she would just be taking like the moon tea as just Plan B. Like anytime she slept with him, just like taking it as Plan
Oh,
B to
like
ensure that
average.
she didn't get pregnant. Yeah, it's like her birth control.
Yeah.
But no, she was freaking pregnant. She was aborting.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean,
Like I definitely didn't see that coming. And that's another theory that the internet has copped up, which I really hope isn't true, is that given that this affair clearly has been happening for a long time with Allison and Kristen, it was in season one, they just deleted the scene.
mm,
It's kind of like it is the theory is that she has a fourth son, Daron, who is hidden away in Old Town for reasons unbeknownst to us.
oh
And
yeah.
I don't know why he's in Old Town in the books. He just went over there probably just to pilgrimage essentially. But in the books, he's a Targaryen. He's a dragon rider, but he has a dragon, and technically, dragons are not supposed to be ridden by anyone that is not Valyrian.
Mm,
So I don't necessarily think it's true,
right.
but it's a theory, and it is plausible, unlike other theories in this show.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, stands to reckon that them being useless and reckless, with their bedroom Olympics, that this would happen. The idea it's gonna come up here in a minute about her being so stupid in many ways, but to leave the friggin' tea out later on is just the most Allison shit of all time. But
He's just
we'll come back to it.
she had her moment in this episode though. Ugh, this one.
Yeah, she did, and we'll get to that too. So the Team Green's plan is coming into focus. Everybody thinks Sir Kristen and his group of soldiers are all headed off to Harrenhal. They're actually headed to taking all the coastal castles. In a way that's not going to create a blockade, but kind of like a blockade that if the Dragonstone people ever wanted to get to Westeros, they'd have to, take a much longer route, and that is their form of strategy here. Aegon was never told of the plan. It was kind of set up by Aemon and Chris or
Just yeah.
Kristen and Lord Laris knew as well, and nobody told him, and he's super pissed. And we all know why they didn't tell him, because he sucks. You know,
He's
everybody
an
knows that
idiot.
he's terrible, and he's an idiot, and he's impulsive, and so they don't tell him that. And so as he's ranting and raving about this, Aemon tries to, man, he shades him completely, really, by speaking to him in, High Valerian.
Mm.
And, I remember those scenes from season one, you know, Aegon, not a great student, probably had a little bit ADD, ADHD, couldn't focus.
He's
And,
been drunk the whole time.
yeah, class clown, didn't focus on his studies, whatever phrase you want to use. And so, Aemon talks to him in High Valerian that he can understand but can't answer, like at least not intelligently. And just to be like, look, brother.
I can have, I can make war, and then he's just like, in the corner, hilarious.
Hmm.
I think that is you know what? I loved that scene because it's such a subtle power move.
Yeah.
It's like again, he's pissed because he came into the brothel laughing at his
Oh yeah.
very naked brother. So it's just like
Aegon, as we've nicknamed him.
Pokemon. That is it's a very subtle power move. Uh, Aegon Valerian is on Duolingo. I highly suggest you download the app. But he's pissed at him, and it's kind of his very subtle power move to be like, you're here with a crown, claiming to be this herald of this Targaryen dynasty, but you don't speak this incredibly ancient language. You're not a good strategist. You're not telling they don't, and they're not telling him anything. And he's mad about it. It's like
Yeah.
when they find out Daemon has effectively taken Harrenhal, he's like yelling at Larys. He's just like, "How did this happen? How did you let Daemon of all people do this? It's your castle, bro. What are you doing?"
Yes. He's like, yeah,
And,
that place is run down. You don't need to worry about that anyway. And which
and it's broke
reveals
because it has all of its gold.
yeah. And again, that's again what reveals like the other parts of the plan that they didn't include him on. He's just, he completely loses his shit about it, and rightfully so as the king. You know, I,
He's an imbecile.
well, his inadequacies are his own. Them filling the holes for his inadequacies without informing him or without guiding him, or again, he had a hand that could have done that for him, he fired. So I mean, he gets everything that he deserves. Like I totally get that, but I mean, his feelings of being shut out by the process, yeah, no, yeah, he's completely within his right to feel all pissed off about it. And again, in his brother, yeah, it is a subtle power move to be soon followed by an absolute
Power move.
power move, not subtle at all.
He Mortal Kombat at his
Yeah,
ass.
that I mean, he really, obviously feels that he should be king, and
He's not
Lord.
wrong.
Yeah, and Lord Laris is the same way too. Like I think everybody knows that Aegon is not suited for the job, which his mother's going to tell him very plainly here. And these things are being put into place, but you just don't necessarily know who's actually putting them into place, or if people are going into business for themselves, as a wrestling term. All right, let's move forward. Yeah, nice tea, nigga. All right, so as mentioned this before, so she takes the moon tea to get rid of her pregnancy from Sir Kristen. She obviously has some effects from that medically, and uh, so she's having those effects when Lord Lara shows up to her suite, and she sees it. He sees her all bent over in pain.
Get out.
I
Yeah.
what you say she had too much cheese or something. I don't remember
Yeah.
what she
She
said,
said
or
she
too many
indulged
sweets.
too heavily into lamprey pie and it made her sick, and that's why she wasn't at the council. But then
Yeah,
she leaves the moon tea
moon
container out,
tea
and he's just
on the
like,
table.
"You're
Yeah.
passing something."
Yeah, he sees it and clocks it, and then he also, clocks the idea that she was pregnant, and he brings up, Sir Kristen a little bit too. But her biggest
He
thing was
knows.
like, so well, of course he does, and then he brings up, or she brings up the idea that, hey, maybe he sees the books that she has out, like the history books that King Viserys used to um, read all the time, and basically she asked him, do you think Aegon was supposed to be king? And he's like, it doesn't matter. Everything has already happened. The cart's too far down the road. Like, these are the cards that we're dealt at this point, and we need to deal with it from here. And again, to give her credit, she could have dismissed this and never said anything to anybody, never read a history book or whatever.
You could have
But
been
she
like, yeah,
also,
fuck it.
yeah, but she also knows her son sucks, and since he sucks, it, you know, could I avoid some of this too by having made other decisions? But again, like Lara said, it's too late to change this at this point.
Yeah,
It's
and then you kind of have her slowly coming to that realization. She is scouring all of these Targaryen history books for a mention of the Song of Ice and Fire that mention that it's about Aegon the Conqueror, not about Aegon, her drunken
dumbass son.
usurper son.
Yeah.
And she's looking for it, but she's not finding anything. So it's kind of it's Allison operates on this very keen sense of morality that she just like the this line of morality that she just uses like a jump rope essentially. Like it's a you kind of oh my god, how do I explain this? She put Aegon on the throne. She said literally the night a couple hours before that Rhaenyra would have made a fine queen before that. And
Mm-hmm.
then she goes and puts him on the throne after she hears the word Aegon come out of Viserys's mouth
Mm-hmm.
without proper context. And it's a way for her to justify things to herself, whereas everyone else around her kind of sees it as it is. She has a very twisted sense of morality that she manipulates, like sending away, like she's there in season one comforting the maid that Aegon raped, but then paying her for her silence.
Mm-hmm.
She, and then she yells at him for it, but she's more like, "Oh, look at the shame you're casting on this house, the shame you're casting on me, on your wife," and it's more like the shame you're casting on your own reputation. Who's going to support you if they know that you're a rapist? If you're going to make you king, like she doesn't actually care.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a kind of a way to lie to herself as her own morality. So she's like looking in all these history books, but she's not gonna find it. It's Targaryen lore passed from one Targaryen to another. They pass it directly because no one else needs to know about it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
yeah,
I
her and
mean,
her moon tea. And then
yeah.
she said that she's like Rhaenyra's supporters are gonna believe what they want. So are Aegon's, and
Mm-hmm.
whoever wins is gonna eventually sit the Iron Throne. And the line in the book, which they kind of stole to give to Alicent, is either Rhaenyra or Aegon will live at the end of this, but not both of them. And that's how you kind of know shit's happening.
Yeah. 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 Her sense of morality, air quotation marks, is hilarious
It's
because
incredibly fake.
yes,
She's a humongous hypocrite.
yeah. I mean, she's again a terrible person, much like her son, but she would never see it or call it out because of what she's done. But yeah, it's it's your kid, man. You're the one that freaking raised that monster. But whatever. All right. He's so high, high above me.
The
He's
new
so
girl reference today.
lovely. Okay, so what is her name of the rivers here?
Alice. It's not of Rivers. It's just Alice Rivers.
Okay, Alice Rivers is essentially a screaming Myrtle or whatever that Harry Potter character is.
Moaning Myrtle.
Moaning Myrtle. Yes, this is Moaning Myrtle, man. Come on, she's just in the castle making up stuff, and her and Damon have this long scene, really, where she's explaining like the history of the castle to him and all this. In a dream, he not see. I don't. This is a dream,
Oh,
right?
it's
He's
real.
not
No, it's
seeing.
real.
Huh?
That's real. It's real. Yeah.
Okay, he's seen. Oh,
You
you
missed
telling me
what?
it's real, or he
It's
thinks it's
okay.
real?
So no, it's real. The first part of the scene, which you have neglected to mention, is when he hears stuff outside of his door, gets up with his sword because Damon stays with that damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
Gets up with his sword and he's following around uh Aemond
Mm-hmm.
all
Oh
the
yeah.
way through the castle, which leads him to Alice, which again, foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm.
And then like he turns around and then it's just Damon with long hair and an eye patch, and I started cackling like a witch because that was hilarious. And then he comes in and then he finds Alice. But yeah, she gives him the rundown of the history of the castle. She's like, "Why are you up late?" Like, she's just like here essentially mashing stuff. She's clearly making a potion or a tonic or a something. She's clearly doing some witchy shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then she tells him about the history of Harrenhal. Oh, it stood for all this time. And he's like, "Who the hell are you?" And she's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm Alice Rivers." And he's just like, "Oh, you're a bastard?" And she's like, "No, I'm just like a barn owl." And then he's just looking at her like, "Please stop saying weird stuff."
Yeah.
And he's like,
She
"No,
get
I'm a bar now." And then she gives him a drink because she's and like then you kind of see, she's like low key kind of a telepath. I think this is just her witchiness. It's like, oh, you're here after an argument with your wife. You send they ravens arrive, but you send none back. Like she's picking up on everything that's going on with them, things that
Mhm.
he never said, and now it's just like she sees all, Lady Alice. Or
Yeah.
I think the line in the book is, "My lady sees all, Uncle."
Mm. And she gives him this potion, which makes him kind of high to continue his hallucinations. You know, when he was up at the call it a small council with them, he's just like he's high, he's tripping. You know,
And
like
he
whatever.
sees another ghost.
Yes, the
His
ghost
ghost
of
of
his ex-wife, right?
Lady Lena Valarian, the mother of his two daughters, Bela and Rhaena,
Hmm.
is there kind of serving like him wine, or like he's thinking that it's serving him wine. It's obviously somebody else because she's burnt and
Trip.
at the bottom of the ocean.
Hmm.
But yeah, the foreshadowing of everything that he ever did wrong, kind of haunting him in this place is,
Yeah.
I don't know, his version of atonement.
Yeah. Mm. Okay. We'll keep moving, and we know we're going to get into the part, especially if you've already seen this show, what everybody's waiting on. Let me tell you why you ain't shit, son. Um, so after Aegon is still feeling bad about being sidelined and he gets all angry, he goes to his mother for some support.
No,
Um,
he goes to his rooms probably to go get drunk, and
oh,
then she's in there looking for Viserys's old books,
oh, okay.
scourging for the Song of Ice and Fire, this is what kind of annoys her about him. It's like, I think with everything going on with Allison in this particular part, what they
Mhm,
said in the after shows, like you kind of see her stripped down in a way that you haven't seen her before. You see
mhm.
her without a filter. She
Oh,
is saying what she means, and she rarely ever does that because when you're playing the Game of Thrones, you can barely ever do.
hmm.
And so she's in there, and she's like, "Where are your dad's books?" And he's like, I removed them."
Got
He's
rid
like,
of. Mm,
he's like, have you no mind for the history that was in those books? And he's like, "I took them out the room, Mom. I didn't burn them."
mm.
And then he sends everybody out, and then she's like, "Oh," she's like, "I have to be a mother now and comfort your ass." And then she's like, you can just see it on her face. She's like, "Oh, what's wrong?" And he's like, "Aemond and Cole and this and they're plotting behind my back." And they're like, they don't care what I have to say. And then she just kind of like laughs at him, and she's like, what would you have to offer? I'm the king." And then I think it's a great line. "Do you think simply wearing the crown bestows you with wisdom?"
Mm,
I think that's a pretty great line. And she's just like, I, and she's like, "You're kind of an idiot. Like, we did a lot to get you on to this throne." And he says, "Tread carefully." And she's like, "Or what? What are you going to do? You're going to send me away like you did my dad?
mm,
You're going to hang me like you did the rat catchers?" She's like, "I ruled when your dad was turning into the Night King.
mm,
I ruled. Your grandfather was the hand to three freaking kings,
mm,
albeit a terrible person, but he is an incredible politician. And all you did was literally not listen to and send away everybody that is here trying essentially to make sure you stay on this throne."
mm.
And it's just like, you, and he's like, "Mom, what would you have me do?" And he's just like, "What is needed of you?" And he's like, "What's that?" And she's like, "Not a damn thing." She says nothing. Because
Mm,
I think the probably the sliver of motherhood that's within her, because while yes, she is a mother to four children, she's a terrible one. She's not Rhaenyra, she's a bad mother.
yes.
Um the sliver of motherhood within her that has some sort of hope for Aegon, which is, like she says, it's like, "I think when we first got you the crown, my hope for you was that you would just kind of, shut the hell up and study and learn from the people around you, because he was never meant to be king, because he was never trained as heir. That's where their lapse in judgment is. He was not
Right.
trained to be a king. He
Yeah,
learned
because it was always going to
trained
be
to be a
Renair.
ruler.
Hmm.
Like, he was never trained to be king, so he has no idea what he's doing aside from rashness and drunken mistakes.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, again, he showed impulsivity throughout his youth, and you know, it's not a surprise that he's an impulsive adult, air quotation, as well. So his decision making process is a little bit compromised. And the bigger the decisions, the worse decisions he's going to make. Yeah, I yes, do what you're told, which is essentially nothing. But he obviously doesn't like that idea either, because he's going to get all super pissed off and go from making one bad decision to a much worse decision because
Mm.
he's impulsive. I love it when a plan comes together, y'all. So, and Sir Kristen brings his army to. I'm calling it the Red Roof Inn. I think it's the Red Rook, right?
It's called Rook's Rest, but yeah.
Yeah, Red Roof Inn. Uh, so he's like, yeah, I think we should, be out here in the daylight and storm. And Sir Gawain is like, I don't think that's a great idea. We're gonna get exposed. The dragon could see us, and whatever. And we should wait till dark. And he's like, no, I think otherwise. And we'll come back to that in a bit. Renera makes
What's
her.
happening today?
I know I can't get it right. She makes her way home finally after curfew, and her small council's like, "What the hell? Where the hell have
It's
you
not the
been?
small council, it's her
I,
damn son. Her
what's it?
16-year-old son.
Yeah, they're like, "What the hell? Where have you been?" And she explains her stupid ass plan of sneaking into the sept, and they're like,
And
"What the
he's just
hell?"
like, you saw Allison. He's like, you could have been taken or killed. And he's like, she walks into the thing and it's like, yeah, we got to send a dragon to go to Rook's Rest. Because he's like, he's leading. He has no choice because she's gone. He's like, we're sending a dragon where? And he's just like, to fight the army that your vassals have been fighting in your absence, your
Yeah.
grace. And then his mom's all like flabbergasted. And then
Mm-hmm.
she starts asking him like where he was, where she was. And he was just like, I went. She's like, I apologize for the secrecy, but I went to King's Landing. And he's like, what?
And
He's like,
everybody's like,
he's just like,
"What?"
to what possible end? Like, why would you do that? He's like, to see Allison and super peace. And he's just like, and then it's just like, oh, we have to send a dragon. She's like, you know what? I'm
Can't make
done
a
being on
decision.
the side. She's like, I'm
Yeah.
done being on the sidelines. I'm gonna go. And he's just, and Corliss is first. Corliss kind of approaches it with a bit more tact. He's like, Your Grace. He's trying to like reason with her a bit. And then Jason's like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And she's like, why? He's just like, everyone's declaring for you. If you die, we're screwed here. And
Mhm.
technically, if she dies, this entire thing gets passed on to Jace.
Right.
And they're probably not going to support Jace because of his legitimacy.
Right.
Because he's technically not legitimate. He is
Yeah.
technically a bastard.
Yeah.
And he's just like, hey, mom, send me. And he's just like, no, she's not
Nope.
sending that boy anywhere after what happened to her other kid. That's not happening.
Correct.
But she also tells him, like, you lack the experience. Your dragon is smaller. And then Rhaenys kind of says, you must send me. Which
Yeah.
technically at the time, this is Meleys, which is Rhaenys' dragon, which is
Mhm.
called the Red Queen, is the largest dragon on Team Black.
Yes.
And she's also, I think, the oldest dragon. She's 50-something years of age. She's kind of had a lot of history with flying in battle and due to her previous riders, because, like, while some dragon riders like Aegon and Jace and Lucerys and Joffrey, Rhaenyra's kids, had dragons that were what I will call born to them. It's like that bonded to them when they were first born. Like when Daenerys put the dragon eggs in the fire and they hatched to her, became her dragons because they were born to her. She is the mother of dragons. In that respect, like Jace would be the father to Virmax because they put the dragon egg in their cradle, and if it hatches, that bonds to them and becomes their dragon. Other people will go and claim dragons that are already ridden by other riders, like Aemond and Vhagar,
There you are.
Rhaenys and Meleys. That dragon, I think, initially belonged to Daemon and Viserys' mom.
Mhm.
Oh my god, like Helena and her dragon Dreamfire, that belonged to Queen of the West, Queen Rhaena.
Mhm.
Like it's a like long held tradition essentially. But his dragon's as old as him, 16 years old. So it's not. Whereas Meleys is, I think, 50 in her 50s.
Yeah. No,
So,
yeah, Jason's dragon's really tiny.
so it's not necessarily the smartest thing for him to go. And she sends Rhaenys, and you see her hesitate with it too. She's hesitant to send anybody out after what happened to Luke.
Mm.
But she goes, and we have a very kind of beautiful scene where you have her summoning Jace into her quarters, telling him as her heir the Song of Ice and Fire. You have her kind of like you see his face a couple of times, like them talking, but you kind of have her like as a voiceover as you see Rhaenys preparing Meleys to go into battle, speaking High Valyrian to her. I would also just like to make a side note. Rhaenys has some badass armor. I just want to say that. Super dope.
Hmm.
And then you see Aegon making a dumb decision
Yes.
because man is essentially drunk driving a dragon. Like, I don't know why Aemon didn't pull him over for a DUI.
Yeah.
Like, because you see him drinking his flagon of wine, he's putting on the armor, which is in the last episode they told us that is the armor of the first Aegon that conquered the Seven Kingdoms. So I think it
Mm,
makes him feel like he has some legitimacy when it doesn't. And you see him then bring out his dragon, a very, very golden dragon, which is called Sunfire,
mm,
who is bilingual. What a king.
mm.
And you see like these moments with the dragons, and this comes back to a thing George R. R. Martin said kind of in a press conference earlier this week instead of writing the freaking sixth Game of Thrones book, saying that his portrayal of dragons is a little bit different from popular media. He doesn't portray them as beasts; they are sentient beings with thoughts, emotions, feelings. Like Aemon losing control of Vhagar, like they have their own kind of minds and wills. Dragons, I forgot, Daenerys said it all the time: a dragon is not a slave.
Mhm.
I love how they're doing that within the show. You kind of seen the bond between a dragon and its rider, which I think is really beautiful.
Well, Sir Kristen's plan is starting to come together here as he has his army, storming the Red Roof Inn. I put muhaha because this is twisting your mustache kind of plot here.
Mm-hmm.
And then let the Battle of the Dragons. Wait, there's three of them? And you kind of alluded to this too. It's going to begin as they attack the Red Roof. Rhaenys comes with Melees and her dragon, and she begins to lay waste to some of Sir Kristen's folks. But then Aegon comes in with Sunfire that nobody knows it's going to be there and takes everybody by surprise. And then we get this little reveal off to the side that hiding under some leaves and trees
How the hell did he
there.
do that? That's the
Yeah,
biggest dragon in the world.
exactly. There's Vhagar and Aemon, hiding, and Aemon kind of delays his go into battle once he sees his dumbass brother up there. But once he does realize that he's there, he goes ahead and takes off too. And he
Here we go.
Dracarys is his brother. Like he gets an opportunity as they're fighting there, and
He's
his
just like,
brother, he's
oh, thank
Dracarys.
the gods when he sees Rhaegar. His face went from like, oh, yay, to oh
Yay
my
to oh
god, so
no.
quickly.
Yeah,
Like, that's y'all's king? Do you see his face? That's y'all's king? Y'all
right.
crazy.
But
And
the
he's like,
plan,
you're
go ahead. But the
he,
plan was to get them to bring one of their dragons out and then
wore
use
them out
essentially
completely.
Vhagar, the biggest dragon, to destroy whatever dragon that they had come
True,
out
true.
with. I mean,
Aemon,
this was
Aemon was
smart.
the plan. Aemon was
Yeah.
the plan the entire time. And it's like you see her come out, and then you see like Gwaine being like, you dumb idiot. Was this
Mm,
your plan? And he's just like, nope, signal arrows. And then you get this amazing flash to Vhagar in the woods. Amazing.
yeah, it's
And
great. Like,
Aemon's just there, and he's about to like go and fly, and then he looks up and he sees Sunfire and Aegon, and he's just like, ugh. He calls his brother a freaking idiot, and
yes.
then he tells him to wait, and then you kind of see it when you see first. This is a whole huge book change, by the way. You see in the show, you see first Rhaenys seeing Aegon, and she like you see it on her face. She smiles, like she sees she has an opportunity to take this motherfucker out,
Hmm.
and she takes it. Like while Aegon Dracarys is her, he does say Dracarys.
Hmm.
I would also like to point out that's the only word he says in High Valyrian to his dragon the whole time is Dracarys.
Hmm.
He's like forward Sunfire, faster. So as I said,
Hmm.
Sunfire is a bilingual king because his rider was not learning Valyrian.
Hmm.
And I genuinely wanted that my only qualm about this is I did not get a Dracarys out of Rhaenys before other
Hmm.
events unfolded. I really did want to hear that, but you got her essentially saying to attack, and Meleese was fighting with nails and tooths and claw, sir.
Yeah.
She was going at it. She cut Sunfire up. She was biting its wings, its membranes. In the book, that's what happens in the book. She bites him, and she essentially tears out his membranes. One of his wings is almost falling off.
Mm.
Sunfire when it falls to the ground, and she does that all on her own, Rhaenys, without the help of Aemon Dracarys, his brother.
Yeah.
Because in the book, Sir Kristen's plan involved both Aegon and Aemon.
Okay.
He
Nah,
well, yeah, the whole dynamic of Aegon and Aemon is completely different in the books.
yeah.
They are brothers. They are one. They are working together. That is a
Instead
book
of
to
being
show change.
rivals here.
Yeah, that is a book to show change that I freaking adore because it works and they did it well.
Mm.
because it makes a bit more sense with the characterization that they gave for Aemond, which is bullied kid turning. I mean, they gave a
Trying to get
bullied,
revenge on everybody.
yeah. They gave a bullied, neglected mommy and daddy issues middle child the AK-47 Westerosi equivalent of a dragon,
Mm.
and they're now surprised that it's turning out the way that it did.
Mm.
So they attack together, and it's it says in the book it's against Vagar, Meleys probably would have won, but against both of them together, she wouldn't. But in this, you see her kind of drag down Aegon with Aemon's help, kind of, and then you kind of see her go. She burns some stuff. Aegon hits the floor. Sir Kristen goes running, trying to go get Aegon, and you kind of see her turning, going away, exactly, and then she turns around
Yeah.
to go see if she could take out Aemond.
Yeah. And that's my thing there too. It's just like I understand and that might be book accurate or whatever. It's like
Yeah.
she could take this out. But in the especially being the strategist that she is, at that point in time, you get the hell out of there. Like, there's no
Mhm.
point of being there, even if you don't know that they're working together, which obviously you do after a couple of seconds and minutes there. You get out and kind of let that go because you've obviously been set up. And her to go back in at it probably doesn't make the most strategy sense, but I understand
Yeah,
that
when
point
she
made.
turns around, like Aemon sees it, and he's just like, "Bitch, what are you doing?" He's
Yeah,
like, "You could have left. I'm gonna go kill my brother. You could have
exactly.
left."
You could have, and she does get singed in this situation. And then when she does get a chance to go back and fight,
Yeah,
Vagar, strikes
she
and
gets.
kills the smaller dragon, bites it, breaks the neck essentially, and
Yeah,
chews almost through
she
it.
gets him. She does get him though. They come back and they clash in the sky. And when Wolf's watching the behind the scenes thing, first
Mm,
of all, David and Dan Benioff. This is how you make a real two dragons fight in the sky. By the way, in
mm,
perfect lighting and
yeah,
well done. They
yeah.
kind of what they did is they researched how birds of prey are going to fight. So they
Hmm.
kind of like having Vagar, like she grabs Meleys by the legs and they're both spewing fire at each other. It's a great shot watching them essentially turn in the air, and it's very reminiscent of season 8 of Game of Thrones, except that I could see
You
it.
could actually see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have them kind of twisting in the sky. But again, Meleys fights with fire, but she's also fighting with her claws and her nails, and that's what gets it. She literally throws Vagar on the floor. She collapses. That's what knocks over Sir Kristen.
Hmm.
Vagar collapses, and then she's flying away. There is an opportunity for her to
To
get away.
leave. Yeah.
She's literally probably going to get away. But Aemon Targaryen is a coward with no freaking honor, and he sneaks attacks her
Hmm.
like he did Luke, and that's what ends up ending the queen who never was, and she ends up falling.
And exploding dragons, apparently. That's a thing. Um,
Yeah, that's weird. That's
yeah.
because they wanna in the book. We're probably gonna see it tonight. Is her body is literally burned beyond recognition. Like they
Mm,
don't they know it's her because it's like it's right next to the body of the dragon, but it's like it's charred and disgusting and it's gross.
yeah.
And the kind of thing about that is what in the book how it is like she's attacking Sunfire and then Aemon shows up, so it's kind of like that, but it's together.
Yeah.
And then she knocks down Sunfire, and then Aemon comes in and burns the shit out of her
Mm,
with Vagar, and yeah, and then she ends up falling. So that's how she dies, not by chomping, but by fire.
yeah.
I think that was their way to give them the kind of tragic book moment of like Corlys not being able to recognize the body of his wife, because that's what it is in the book, because he loses his shit completely,
Mm,
as one would do.
yeah.
And instead of burning her, because I'm assuming the fire costs a lot of money.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, that's why you didn't see dragons that often in the other ones too. And again, I saw something where somebody was like, "Oh, I gotta finally admit, some opinion thing. I finally admit House of Dragons cook is better than Game of Thrones." And I'm like, y'all just get obsessed with the dragons. Like that's really all it is,
Mhm.
because there's no comparison in terms of the plotting, the pacing, the story, the acting, like all of the things that made Game of
Game of
Thrones
Thrones,
so
what it
good
was.
for 6 of 8 seasons don't not don't exist, but only exist on a smaller level here. But
Mhm.
it has dragons. Like I don't know that we've gone an episode
In
in
terms, yeah,
in
we
in poster that's where you don't even get a dragon.
In
Whereas,
terms of like CGI and FXX, 100% it's better than Game of Thrones in terms of like CGI and doing
yeah,
the dragons,
yeah,
1000%. But in terms of like, in
everything
some
else,
cases, in my opinion, of plots and pacing, Game
yeah,
of Thrones, or at least the early seasons of Game of Thrones,
yeah.
take the cake on that.
People
1000.
like people like shiny things. Dragons are
Yeah,
shiny.
it's a
It,
shiny new thing. As it
yeah,
ages, eventually they're going to be like, hey, you know what? Necessarily, this wasn't as good as this, but it's still good in this aspect, but it's not as great
yeah.
as this.
We
Like,
are creatures of the moment, and
yeah,
this is basically what it is. And again, like Game of Thrones is to blame for that a little bit because of the way that it ended. Like you kind of screwed the pooch at the
yeah,
end, so people
anything
were
that
looking
is
for something
slightly
was
better
going to
than
be
that
better. Correct.
is gonna people are gonna flock to, which is why I didn't think this show was gonna be a success whatsoever. I
Right.
thought they were gonna be like, I don't want to see another white haired person on my screen ever again.
Right. So my work here is done here. So again, as you said, book wise, these two are working together. They're definitely not working together here. Aemon obviously thinks he deserves to be the king, and he bombed his brother. He fell to the middle of a field. In about an hour or so, we'll get a chance to see how this finishes off. But it looks like he was going over there to finish him off if he wasn't dead when Sir Kristen finally
He's
showed
not.
up.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
not
well,
dead.
we know that he's not dead.
Well, firstly,
Yeah, we
I
know.
would just like to say at the start of this scene, because after Rhaenys dies, they kind of fly up to this shot of Aemon just kind of looking very, very satisfied,
Hmm.
having taken out a dragon. I also would like to mention he's the only one out here riding, freaking just in leathers, no armor, bro, and
Hmm.
he is completely and utterly unscathed.
Yeah.
Hate him. And
No.
then he's flying over, and then like it cuts to black, and I was like, oh no, that's how the episode ends. But then it like comes back, and then the first thing I see is Kristen Cole reviving, taking in another breath that he doesn't deserve.
Mm,
And I'm just like, ah, pissing
yeah.
me off. I mean, I know how long he lives because I've read the book, but every single time I see him just survive miraculously, I just feel like the plot armor was thicker. Was he has thicker plot armor than Jon Snow at this point?
No, yeah, for sure.
I'm just like, at least Jon had a point. What are you doing except complaining and calling Rhaenyra a whore at least once every single episode?
Yeah.
So he's rushing over, and like you see Aemon, he has the sword out, but I think it looks more like he's. It's a great thing that's left up to interpretation. Some people argue that he's putting it away.
Mm.
Other people arguing he only put it away because Sir Kristen called him.
Yeah,
Aemon.
that was my interpretation,
Yeah,
right? And then he has the fire and ice dagger as well.
he's like, where's the king? And it's like
Mm-hmm.
you see the dragon there, and it's protecting Aegon in its wing because that is what a dragon does for its rider. You see him kind of kneel down, pick it up, and just kind of point at it.
Yeah,
For the record, as much as I hate the character, can I just say Aemon is really fucking cool
yeah, he is.
as a
No,
character.
a cool
His
heel.
his character design is insane. He has the best hair in the show. I kind of hate that.
Yeah, his lace front is much better than everybody else's.
I know, like why?
Yeah, that's
And then
weird.
Aemon arrived first. He looked like he was gonna kill him. He's like, "Where's the king?" Points with the dagger again, cold as hell. And you
Hmm.
see Sir Kristen kind of fall to his knees tragically, and then Aemon leaves him very
Well,
much
yeah,
serving.
and I definitely think that him having the dagger is a
It
symbol as
becomes oh
well.
so important. Yes, it is. It's
Yeah.
100% some foreshadowing.
Yes, and so like we'll get to that when we get to it. But I mean that's
Yes,
episode 4.
2 hours. Yeah.
Like again, I thought probably the best episode of the entire series at this point in
Oh,
terms of
100%.
action, action, drama, plot, or whatever. Like I thought it was actually very well done, but you got to follow it up, and that's where we are, just about an
I think this
hour from now.
episode is gonna this episode, from what I've seen from the trailers, and by the way, y'all are going to be probably watching the episode when this comes out, so I'm just going to say it,
Mm,
is we're finally getting what I mentioned in episode 3, what I mentioned when we did episode 2, what I thought they were going to do in episode 3 because they set it up so perfectly to do it then, and then didn't do it.
mm,
Even though chronologically it would happen after the Battle of Rook's Rest, it still made more sense to do it then. Because then you're getting like a really epic fight, and then now you're going to get filler-esque, kind of,
yeah,
is setting up the
yeah. We're
dragon
at
siege, which is like gathering all of these essentially Targaryen bastards and arming them with dragons so that they can fight for Rhaenyra, which
mm,
is what you're going to get this episode
okay.
after everything that happened to Rhaenys. But this was an incredible episode. It's a huge book deviation. It's just a book deviation that they did well, which is not something I say on this show, like ever. You're probably going to hear me say it 3 times over the course of this entire show. I've only said it once because everything other book freaking deviation I hate.
Mm,
Which I'm surprised George R. R. Martin lets them do that crap. He is a control freak beyond mass destruction.
mm.
But yeah, I think we didn't put the slide up there, but Aemon Targaryen certainly won the week,
Yeah, I
Aegon
was gonna ask.
and Aegon
Yeah.
Targaryen's. I feel like I mean Aemon definitely won
Mm,
between Team Green and Team Black. Team Green definitely won this week. Aemon won the entirety of the thing,
sure.
and who lost the worst? Probably
Well, I mean, you have
always
to, right? I mean, you have to call Rhaenys the loser. I mean, she went out like a G for sure, but
100%
like,
like a Targaryen.
she still did die, a dragon rider's death, but she did die. But you could also say that Aegon lost a week too, only because
He has
it
no loyalty amongst
right
anyone.
there's that he has, and he showed any vulnerability that he already had, he exposed it even more by now being a shattered king, Aegon the Broken here at this point, because I'm sure there's some version of that he
What?
didn't
Yeah, yeah.
survive this fall without some sort of mortal injury. And
Yeah. I'll show
so
you the pictures later.
I'm
But
sure.
with this, I think we're seeing the start of the dance. We're seeing like the pure again, not the pure beginnings, because the pure beginnings of the Dance of the Dragon should have started with Luke's death, but the showrunner's a freaking idiot. And we're seeing kind of what happens when you send dragons to war, but
Mm-hmm.
what not necessarily. I mean, you saw what happens when you send dragons to war with Daenerys. You're seeing what happens when you put them against each other,
Right.
and that's where everything gets really messy. And then I think for a lot of people who read the book were very devastated by this episode, mostly because of the portrayal of the dragons as sentient beings, not just killing machines.
Mm,
Because like uh, Rhaenys' dragon Meleys was a dragon that she claimed after the death of Princess Alyssa Targaryen, which is Daemon's mom, who died like in childbirth as well, as so many of the Targaryen women unfortunately do.
mm,
She claimed her after she died when she was like 15 years old. Rhaenys did. So Rhaenys was 55 when she died, had been her rider for like 40 years, and she was killed by Vhagar, who Daemon's parents are named Balon and Alyssa,
mm.
and those two were like siblings. Yes, crazy in love. Yeah, 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 yes. Holy crap, that was like the it couple of Westeros. Who's like that Ulf guy was saying were his parents, which is why everybody was all pissed. Like he would never have cheated on Alyssa ever. And what kind of makes it sad is like those two really loved like riding their dragons together. And Alyssa's dragon was Meleys, and Balon's dragon was Vhagar. So it's
Mm.
kind of those. It's a kind of arises the question is like, do dragons remember the past? Do they have any kind of semblance of the people that they once were bonded to, but are they now so neglected by that they're willing to kill each other again? It kind of raises a lot of questions of morality, a lot of questions about the dragons that we're never going to know the answers to because George R. R. Martin's never going to finish that freaking book.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this was definitely the best episode. It was definitely the saddest. Kind of, I really want to see Corliss's reaction. I was really mad when the
Yeah.
episode cut off with Sir Kristen
Well,
because
you got to leave something. I think that
I
was good
knew
for
it.
that. All right.
Yeah, but
So
it's amazing. This was a really great episode.
we'll be back.
Next
Maybe.
Sunday,
Well, I mean, maybe we got summer plans, so we maybe
lock
record
in.
before. We maybe record before we make our summer trip here because we're gonna be
Tomorrow.
gone during. Yes, I know. So we may try to work that in tomorrow and kind of go from there. But as a producer, I'm gonna go ahead and sign off and get myself ready for tonight's episode. Go ahead and sign off, Lady Dragonstone.
Lady Dragonstone is signing off. She is leaving, and for once, she is not seething.
Nice. That's all. Well, this might be a good reason why we take a week off of these things. We'll see you guys next week. Goodbye.
Bye.